In this episode, everyone, there's a few good things going on. I get the engine box hinging, although not without some more problems, which I do solve. I get 2 of the 3 things for the heads/bathroom made up, which I was very pleased about. I also get the main locker panel for cabin 2 made up, which I'm also really pleased about. I also get the gas monitor device fitted, and I can say, finally, I have sorted out some of the parts for the gas install. Although you won't see that in this episode, finally I've got everything, but you'll see that coming up ahead. So just to consult the post-it note lists, that's actually 5 things for this episode. It's the top 2, the engine and some gas line work, parts 1A and C of number 1, and number 2, some work on that cabin 2 locker. Just to give you a look inside to see how things are progressing. There's a bit of friction from the insulation against those uprights, but otherwise it seems to be coming nicely. Here we go, underneath the engine box for the first time. Woo! So as you can see here, it's just rubbing on both sides of the insulation there, which is okay. I can do something about that later, but otherwise it looks pretty good up there. I'm actually quite happy with that. What I need to do is put the bolts in these struts on the engine beds, which obviously will keep them still. Also, the corners on the insulation need to be trimmed. I'll just keep working and crossing off those little things, and hopefully it's going to work. So after that attempt of getting this unit fitted, obviously there's some issues. I can say I really wasn't that annoyed that it hasn't just sort of popped in place where everything is spot on, because this really has been somewhat of a bit of an engineering challenge. If it was just to make the box with the steps, that really wouldn't have been that difficult. The issue, of course, is the fact that I want this to be hinging. There were things that I just couldn't think far ahead enough for. The good thing though is that I really see them as minor things to fix. The main one being, as you can see, That lovely rosewood beam that I've put in interferes with those upright struts. And the other thing is, with that starboard side, where the ignition switch is going to go, the strut on that side is going to rub straight past the back of the ignition switch. So that's not going to work either. And as you did see, where the seawater strainer was bolted to the side of this engine bed, those bolt heads are going to interfere. So I need to come up with a solution for that. I've had a good think about the main things, and with that beam, I'm just going to remove that. With a hacksaw blade, I'll cut that off, epoxy over where it's been removed. I'm going to make up and fit a length of stainless steel tube, which will be fitted right up as high and as aft as possible, and that will allow this box to hinge much, much higher. But the other thing I've decided to do is I'm going to screw that in place. I won't permanently fasten that, which is why I'm going to make it out of stainless steel, because of course a small section can be very strong. And the reason for wanting to have that removable is because there may be times when I might want this whole box to go literally right up to the coach roof, and that stiffening bar will interfere with those struts again. But if it's screwed in place, I can remove 4 screws, and that will allow that to go right up as high as it possibly can. I can't imagine that needing to happen very often. For the bulk of the times, having this box kind of, I'm not sure if you can get the idea, but about that sort of angle will give me plenty of room to have complete access to this whole engine. And as you might remember, the side panels behind this box, both of those are removable as well. And then of course with the other 2 things, the engine switch, I'm just going to make up a bit of a panel mounting plate, if you like, out of rosewood, which will set that switch about 30 millimeters away from being a flush fit. That will allow what's behind the face of that switch to clear the strut. The bolts here for mounting that seawater strainer, I'll come up with another solution. So back to the drawing board a little bit it's been with this, but it's okay. A few minor adjustments, but otherwise, I actually think, in principle, the bulk of this has been a win. Well, I'm back in the heads and happy to be making panels again, that's for sure. The first thing I'm going to do is get to work to finish this toilet pedestal. All I need now is the base, and so the plan with that is to bond 2 12mm marine ply panels together to make it up to 24mm, and that is just to make it really strong, because as you can imagine, a toilet on top here where the base bolts down is much, much smaller than the top, and so even somebody sitting on the toilet, if all their weight is on one edge, that does put a lot of leverage force on where and how it's bolted down. So I want to make that really strong, obviously all coated in epoxy. It'll get painted white after as well to match in. So the first thing I need to do is, with a bit of CAD assistance, cardboard assisted design, get a template in here first, transfer that through to probably a bit of thin plywood just to check to make sure the fit is good, and then transfer that through to the marine ply. I can say it is so nice to have moved on from the engine box and the gas. Whew. And I have so been looking forward to getting on with something else. And these cabinets in the heads here, oh, it's kind of refreshing. The rest of that pedestal base is well underway. I've got the main base laminated up and I've got the template made up. So that's ready to cut up. So now it's this cabinet here. This is going to be a little bit tricky, not exactly simple, but I think the effect will be good in the end. So what I'm going to do here, obviously that will have an end panel, but I'm also going to have a fixed little return here. And the reason is because I don't think I need doors to expose that whole space. So a little return here, then two doors. And then behind those doors, I'm also going to have a fixed piece. And the reason for that will be just to help control water when you're in here having a shower, so that I don't have to screen things off when water hits these doors and runs down, to stop it running behind those doors and then running down onto the hull itself. I'll have a piece of trim behind there so that if water does go between the gaps and runs down on the back of those doors, once it comes down to the bottom, that other piece will direct water so that it runs down into the shower base here and obviously then down through the drain. The other thing I'm going to do though is I'm going to have a top trim piece, and the reason for that is because I need somewhere to have the taps for the shower. And what I already have done is bought the tap itself, the mixer tap. And so I think that right here is a good place to have that mounted. And of course, if this is all doors, that won't work. And of course, that is a great location because the water supply itself runs up just under here. I've already got that in place. So that hose just needs to come up, which will supply water both to the sink and the shower. This has been so enjoyable, just picking off a few bits of offcuts for the heads cabinet. Everything is square there, so I'm going to be able to use the table saw, cut it all up without having to make templates, dry fit 4 times. Man, this is just going to come together so quick. Oh yeah, baby! So whilst I'm on a bit of a run with cutting up marine ply, I'm also going to cut up this front panel as a locker for cabin 2. It's a pretty straightforward piece, not exactly rectangular in shape. The top and the bottom have their bevel cuts, but apart from that, it's a pretty simple thing. I will of course need to put some openings to access the shelves that will be behind there, but for a start, I just want to cut up that panel and then figure out the openings so that I can epoxy it with the heads panels. It does feel good making short work of making this heads cabinet, and also that's the main front panel for that cabin 2 locker, which is 7 pieces, which basically makes up the bulk of that. What I want to do though with that heads cabinet is on the doors and also the end panel, put a nice radius just to take the sharp edges off that, which of course I'll use the router for doing that. So that's what I'll do next. So another thing I need to do with this whole gas installation is mount this gas detection control unit. As I've explained already, it's a lovely little slim unit, but of course the wiring needs to be attached to it, and so either that has to have a cutout in some sort of bulkhead or faceplate, which I imagine would be the common way to mount it, but I don't really want to do that. What I've worked out is the advice is to have the unit close to the gas devices. I don't want to have this on the cooking side for obvious reasons, so what I have decided to do is put it on the other side of this bulkhead. Obviously, very close to the unit itself, easily read here, but what that will mean is, with regards to the wiring, this unit has these little wiring plugs on the back of it, 2 of them, as you can see here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to router out the back of this panel where the wiring needs to go and enough to allow for those plugs, and then obviously just epoxy coat all of that, and then that can be mounted. And pretty much the last thing I need to do to get all the necessary parts installed is drill 3 more holes through the bulkheads alongside that gas pipe, which will carry the wiring to the gas locker box for that solenoid automatic shut-off valve. I can say that making, editing and producing videos is as grueling as much of the good boat work, everyone. This episode is another long one and a lot of work. Please consider supporting to help me out. Thanks. And of course, if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. Please subscribe if you haven't. Click the bell so you get the notifications. Check out my website. And as I always say, leave a comment because I like reading what you have to say.